Hi, and welcome to my video telling you about my daughter Vivian's birth story. I'm going to put a trigger warning right here saying if you do not want to hear about an accident while you're pregnant or having an induction, then I would click off of this video right now because Vivian's birth story includes both of those and it's a wild ride. But if you're wanting to hear it, then let's get started because it's a wild one. Here we go. On the 20th of March in 2024, I was called into work an hour later than usual as we had a client that had a project that needed to get done, and I was supposed to have that day off. But since that client needed to have it done, I needed to go into work. So I packed up my lunch and I got my 39-week pregnant self in the car and headed to work. On my way, I was T-boned by someone who ran a stop sign. He spun and my car flipped. When I was in the car, I thought I had flipped 2 or 3 times because of how many impacts happened. But it turns out that my car did one rotation, but when I got hit, I skid just a little bit and hit grass, and it hit my car so that it flipped my car. Hit on the it hit on one corner, jumped over the driver's side, hit the other corner opposite, like diagonal, and then landed on its wheels. And that's one reason why I think God had his hand in this entire day. After my car came to a halt, I undid my seatbelt and I frantically tried every single door. And so when I climbed into the back seat, I tried both of those doors. They didn't open. And I looked to the back and I saw that there was the back window smashed out. And so I knew that that was my exit strategy. The car wasn't on fire. I didn't feel unsafe in the car. But since I couldn't unlock the doors, I just needed to get out of the car because I didn't want to have to deal with the jaws of life or anything that would maybe have to cut me out of the car and put me under a lot of stress. So I just figured I would have my adrenaline, and I figured my adrenaline kicked in, and I just did everything I could to get out of that car. So after getting my foot stuck in the third row seating, I made my way out of the car, out of the back window. I did cut my hands in a couple different places. I had to pick glass out of a couple scrapes. And so I started searching for my phone when I got out of the car because I needed to call 911. I needed to call my husband. And as I was searching, the man who hit me came to check if I was alive and okay. Um, and as he and I were chatting, someone did stop and call 911. And I just sat on the hood of my car for a second and just grabbed my belly and I just said, "Dear Lord, please let her be okay." because we hadn't named her yet, but we did know that it was a she. And so I just said, dear Lord, please let her be okay. I don't know if she's okay. And my husband likes to say, in true Brienne fashion, um, I was a Spitfire after I got out of that car, because when the gentleman came to see if I was okay, I had some scolding words for him. And later on, we did learn that after he blew through the stop sign and he hit me, and when he came to a halt, he said, "Oh God, who did I kill?" Because he was not paying attention and was going that fast and had that impact on my vehicle going that fast that he believed that he actually killed me. But again, the Lord kept Vivian and I alive because we got to the hospital. They got an ultrasound on her and they got a heart monitor on her, and she was just fine. She was doing great. And I had had an anterior placenta the entire pregnancy, and it kind of stunk because I didn't get to feel her as much, and it just wasn't the best. But the Lord knew that I needed to have an anterior placenta so that it could protect Vivian. But um, when I was at the local hospital, because it was just a small town hospital, they told me that I would need to be life flighted because I was pregnant and they did not have the resources to take care of a pregnant woman. So, um, luckily, my boss at the time was alerted that I wasn't going to be at work, and she came down to the hospital and she was able to give my husband AJ a phone call telling him, and AJ was able to make it from where he worked to the hospital before my helicopter ride. So after getting to the larger hospital and having a CT scan to make sure that I didn't break any bones and that I was okay to get that collar off of me, which was completely uncomfortable. That was probably the most uncomfortable part of the whole thing, aside from getting checked to see how dilated I was by people who don't have a lot of experience doing that. But after my CT scan was up, the doctor told me that I would not be leaving the hospital without a baby in my arms. Now, this was a really hard pill for me to swallow because my entire pregnancy, I had been seeing a midwife at a birth center, and I was planning on having my birth there. But there was risk for placental abruption because I was in a rollover accident. And so I was taken up to labor and delivery, where my husband and I were told our induction options because of the risk of placental abruption. We needed to get this show on the road. So we chose to do a Cervidil, as it was the lowest form of induction that we could choose. And I'm just going to preface this with, I do not have a problem with anyone who wants to do a hospital birth. I don't have anyone who wants to get induced. It just wasn't in my plan, and it wasn't something I wanted to do as a first-time mom. But we knew the Lord had us, and we knew that this is the plan, and this is what needed to be done to get Vivian here safely. So at around 4:20-ish, I had the Cervidil inserted and the 12-hour clock started, because you can only have a Cervidil in for 12 hours. However, before being life flighted, I was 25% effaced. Vivian was at -3 station, and I was completely closed. But again, the Lord had started to work, and he started to have me dilate, and by the time they put the Cervidil in, I was already dilated 1.5 centimeters, which was a great start. So I went through the first few hours with light contractions. Some I didn't even feel, some I just felt tightenings. And then around 10:30, I really started feeling them. And I would try to get comfortable, but then Vivian, as soon as I got to a good spot, would decel, and the nurse would come in, tell me that I need to change positions, or I would be watching the monitor and I'd see that she decelled, and so then I'd change positions, and she would be just fine as long as I was in probably some of the most uncomfortable positions that you could be in, especially after being in an accident. I had bruises on my knees, and she liked me on my hands and knees facing the back of the bed, um, or on the birth ball, leaning over the bed, what have you, for uncomfortable spots. She seemed to thrive in them. Uh, but I was told that if she continued to decel, no, it was early in the day. It was about an hour after I had that Cervidil put in. She decelled something crazy when I was in the shower and feeling comfortable. When I got out, the nurse and the midwife both came in and told me that if she continues to decel like this, that we're going to have to take the Cervidil out, because she's not dealing with the Cervidil very well, and we would have to go with a higher form of induction to get it going, since she was decelling so much. However, continuing back to around 10:30, 11 o'clock, the nurse suggested that I could get in the water, as my monitors were waterproof, and I couldn't give birth in the tub, but I could labor in the tub. And so we tried the water. That calmed the pain and myself down a little bit, but I'm really not a bath person, so I wanted to get out soon after I was in there. I think I was in there for like half an hour, 45 minutes. However, my body had calmed down a little bit, so when I stood up, contractions really picked up. I would have two on top of each other, and then like a minute and a half break, and I'd move to a different position. I'd still be standing, and then I'd have another couple, or I'd have a really long one. And yeah, labor was on top of me. I felt like I could not get on top of my contractions, and I felt like I was a little bit out of control, but I knew that this is what was needed to be done. So I labored. Um, AJ tried to get a little bit of sleep before I took a bath, but of course I'm laboring and mooing and making noise, and so he didn't get a lot of sleep, which I felt really bad for him because he had been up since 5 o'clock that day for him to get to work, and it just had been a really long day for him and for me. But wanting labor to speed up a little bit, I did stand and brace at the end of the bed to try and push through and maybe get on top of these contractions and feel like I was a little bit in control. And so my midwife, not the one that I was working with my entire pregnancy, but the one that was on staff at the hospital, she came in and she tried to do hip squeezes while I went through contractions, and those really didn't seem to help. But nonetheless, we tried it. And so, to make everyone in the room laugh, including myself, I felt that I was making noises like Brendan Fraser when he was playing George on George of the Jungle. And so I braced myself for another contraction, and I said, "I'm king of the jungle and I make jungle calls," and I let out my moan, and I do believe that I did get a couple laughs, and I did make myself laugh, which was nice to get some oxytocin flowing. And that did seem to help the contractions a little bit, but again, after a few of them being as painful as they were and bearing down, and the midwife had come in to check me because it was around 4 o'clock at this point, and she was going to check to see where I was at for dilation. And um, when she checked, she told me that I had gone from a 1.5 to a 4 in these 12 hours. And everyone else seemed pretty happy about that, but I was I was discouraged because I was only at a 4. However, they assured me that it was good progress because I had gone from a 1.5 to a 4, and Vivian had moved down to -1 station instead of -3. And that some women get the Cervidil and they are still at a 1.5 12 hours later. However, the pain was substantial. And so I asked the Lord again for another thing. It was either to, whew, I think this is when I was going to get emotional. I haven't the last few times that I've tried this. I asked him to either slow the pain down and give me a little bit of a break, or let's just get this labor done. Because I wanted the baby here and I wanted to have this craziness of a day to be over. Because it was a nutty day. And boy, did he answer. from 4 a.m. to 5:40, I went from a 4 to an 8, having multiple contractions right on top of another. I did break down and I did have a fentanyl put in my IV. And instead of helping, it actually, or instead of calming me down, it helped me help. I don't know if it helped my body calm down to stop some of my pain receptors in certain areas, or just slow my brain down so that I wasn't thinking about it as much. But it actually increased my contractions. And yeah, like I said, an hour and 40 minutes later, after getting checked, I was told that if I started to feel pushy, to give it a go, because I was at 8 centimeters. Um, and there was only a little bit of my cervix left to move out of the way. Um, and I did have to have an ultrasound early on in the day before we put the Cervidil in, and it was determined that her head was 9 centimeters. So my midwife felt comfortable with me just giving it all I got and pushing. And so shortly after she said that, my body did feel the urge to push. I did that for about half an hour. Uh, I was holding on to my husband's hands and arms. I had a peanut ball between my legs. Anytime that I would have a contraction, the nurses would pull that peanut ball out. They would keep my leg up, and my midwife and the nurses would be looking to see if they could see Vivian's head, crowning, anything like that. And then, of course, in between, hi, sweet pea. In between, they'd put the peanut ball back in. AJ would sit here and just be encouraging me that I'm doing good and that we're progressing. However, Vivian did start to decel and not handle the delivery well. Um, so I was coached to pull up on the opposite leg from the one that I was laying on, because I was laying on my left side, and breathing down like I was, because I had kind of self-taught hypnobirthing throughout my pregnancy. And uh, so I was just breathing down, holding my leg, giving it all I got, all I had. Uh, and I did about 3 or 4 contractions that way. But my midwife was getting very concerned about Vivian, and she told me that we've got to get this baby out. And so I needed to pull up on both of my legs. I could still be laying on my side, but I needed to pull up on both legs and give it all that I had. So I'm pulling up on both of my legs. My husband is pulling up on my arms to be a counter pressure for me, so that I've got kind of like pull up. I'm just giving all of my strength, and I'm breathing down, and I start to feel her head kind of poke out, and they were all very encouraged, and AJ was able to go down and look and see the top of Vivian's head. And so they continued to every single contraction. We did this, and I think it was about 4 to 5 pushes later, she made her appearance earthside at 6:39 a.m. So I didn't even have a full hour of pushing. But yeah, she She came out blue and was set on my chest for me to talk to her and rub her down so that she could take her first breath of fresh air. And then we heard that little cry of hers and knew that the Lord had brought us through one heck of a 24-hour or 21 hours. It hadn't even been a full day. And at the end of it, I got the greatest gift of a wonderful arrival of a healthy, gorgeous baby. And we didn't pick her name out quite yet. We had a couple names picked out. And so it was Hazel Jane or Vivian Grace. And we just kind of thought about it. We got taken down to postpartum. Once we got admitted, I had lovely fundal massages. And before we got taken down to postpartum, the midwife who caught Vivian, she was at the end of a 24-hour shift, and I don't know what the heck happened, but I got misstitched. She bridged instead of sewed together something. I don't know. My husband knows more of the details than I do. But they had to numb me back up, take the stitches out, and the next midwife on deck came in and restitched me because they were worried about me hemorrhaging with how much blood I was losing. So they did give me an IV bag of Pitocin to try and slow down the bleeding. And so back down in postpartum, once they gave me another fundal massage and they did a check with Vivian, I told AJ, I just need to take a nap. I need you to take her and I need to take a nap. And so he did, and we talked about names right before I took a nap. And we said, all right, the middle name Jane is out. Her middle name is going to be Grace, no matter what. Because by the grace of God, she and I are here, and she's definitely, by the grace of God, she's here because we did have some infertility issues. And if you want to hear about that, I've got another video going up, and it'll be in the link in the description below. So Grace was going to be her middle name, and it was between Hazel and Vivian. And I went to sleep. AJ held her and got to study her and interact with her a little bit between her dozing in and out of sleep. And so I woke up from a 2.5 hour nap, and he looked at me and he said, her name is Vivian. She's a Vivian. And it's true. She lives up to the name Vivian. Vivian means active and lively, and even at almost 2 months, she most definitely is active and lively, and she's just such a delight to have around. Where was I at? Oh, and I was very happy to hear that he wanted to name her Vivian Grace, because I had actually had a dream when I was 36 weeks pregnant that we did name her Vivian Grace. I didn't know why. I just remember seeing me holding a baby and naming her Vivian Grace, but I didn't know what was to transpire in 3 weeks. All right, finishing up. I didn't know what was going to transpire 3 weeks after having that dream. But we are so grateful for God's grace and allowing us to, or being there, not allowing us, being there with us, getting us through that accident safely and getting us through labor and delivery. And yeah, we're very grateful for the blessing that we do have, that is our little Vivian. This is her. But she's got to go down for another nap, so I'm gonna sign off. But like I said, if you would like to see our labor or our infertility journey, then click the link in the description below and we will see you over there. Thanks for listening. And I will put pictures of the car at the end of this video for anyone who does want to see it. But if you don't, then I would click off this video now because they're not fun to look at. It was actually really hard for me to ask my husband to give me those photos so that I could put them at the end of this video. So yeah.